Welcome back everyone to the second episode of the FRC Java programming tutorial. Today we are here to talk about the hardware class. This class mainly converts all the constants that were created into their respective categories. What I mean by this is, if you can see here, there's Talon SRX, Victor SPX, and Joystick. These are all different areas of the robot. What I mean is they control different functions and have different functions. The Talon SRX here, which I said I'd get into more this episode or another episode, this basically allows for specific movement. Like, if I told you to walk 5 steps forward, this would be able to tell you walk 5 steps forward. However, if I tried to tell you with the Victor SPX, I would just have to tell you walk forward for a certain amount of time. So the Talon SRX allows for specific movement, while the Victor SPX allows for basic movement. And that's basically how it is. If you want specified things to happen, like as precise as possible, Talon SRX is your go. If not, Victor SPX will do the job. Now, I'm going to explain the imports and the package up here. So, the package basically is an organization of files and classes. What I mean by that is it has all of these files inside, all the folders, everything in one package, keeping it organized. And why we create a package is so we can import everything you see here like so. Without it, you wouldn't be able to import. Every single Java file has a package, even if you put package or not. But when you don't put package, it just puts it in a default Java package, which isn't exactly good if you're working with systems like this, which require multiple files and just really need that kind of neatness. Anyway, to continue, the import util double solenoid is another file that's here, which we won't get into and you won't need to know the specifics of. And what the double solenoid actually looks like is this, which I would try to show you on this robot, but you're not going to be able to see it in this picture. It's too messy. But yeah, this is what it looks like. It's just, if you see here these two tubes, one is open and one's closed. That's what I mean by push and pull, open, close. So to continue, these two imports here are from a third-party library. Basically, the Talon SRX and Victor SPX both are from CTRE and not FRC, which means they have specific libraries for their motor controllers, which we have to import and use. The constants class, just importing the information that we need from constants, like the right master motor can, right slave motor can, all that. This import, which isn't used in this robot, is just importing for a gyro, which you will learn later in your FRC adventure, but not in this series. And the joystick is an FRC library that we import to create the joystick object. Now, this public static final is basically in public, meaning that any file can access it. Static meaning that you don't have to declare another object and create a whole nother motor and set them equal to each other, basically extra work. Instead, you can just call to this one creation of this motor. And final, meaning that this little area can't be changed. Once this object is created, it can no longer be edited throughout the code. The WPI Talon SRX, which is really just a better version for us to control, because there is such thing as Talon SRX as an import. We just use WPI because it's easier and better because they've updated it to where it's easier to control and handle throughout the code process. The right master motor, it's just another name, a simpler name than this caps lock name. Also, that kind of explains why this is caps versus hardware, which is lowercase, just so you can't get confused on what you're using. The reason why it's in here is because when creating the WPI Talon SRX object, it needs an ID number, which are the numbers you specified here. Now, to go into more detail, basically each motor controller has a different ID number. And to call to control that motor controller, that ID number is used to do that. And to continue, same thing with the WPI Victor SPX. The two differences are that, of course, as I just went through, one gives more specific commands while the other just moves, which is why there's master motor and there's slave motor, which just follows the master. The shifter works the same, public static final, double solenoid shifter, and for this object, the constant dot shifter open and shifter close, as I mentioned earlier, and that's why this exists. The elevator motors and motor controllers are specified here, with one elevator motor being the master and the others following the main motor in one way or another. Sometimes, which in this case it will, elevator motor 3, I believe, will be traveling opposite elevator motor 1, so it all moves in tangent, which you'll see if you checked out our reveal video. If you notice, there are 3 motors, like I mentioned earlier here, with 2 in the same row. If I could, I'm going to use this controller, like if this button and this controller stick were in the same row, then the other motor would be the start button, which means these two would move in the same direction, while this one would have to move in the opposite for the rope to go down or up without the motors getting stuck or working against each other. And for claw turn, just the claw rotation motor, just specifying which type of motor controller would use. Since most of the robot commands here are based off specific numbers, there is usually Talon SRX used. Sometimes there aren't uses for the Talon SRX, which is wheel turn. Really, you could use just a Victor SPX, since all you're doing is really spinning the wheel in one direction or the other without. And to get the specific, since most of the robot commands are based off specific numbers like claw turn, we use Talon SRX. Wheel turn here, the reason we have a Talon SRX here is because Talon has the command called follow. Because in reality, you may see that all the wheel turn does is spin the wheels one direction or the other. So you may think, why is a Talon SRX there? There doesn't really need to be one. The only reason it is because with the follow command, we wouldn't have to tell 2 individual motors to do one thing, but instead we can just have the Victor SPX follow the Talon SRX and just make the code easier and simpler. Another thing with the joystick object, like I mentioned earlier, the USB ports match with the FRC driver station port. In relation to the joystick object, The two joysticks we commonly use are the Logitech joystick and the Xbox 360 controller joystick. These have the same amount of buttons, so it's interchangeable. Depends on really the driver's preference, which controller they'd like to use. And the gyro here isn't actually used in this code, so you can ignore this. But in the future, you will learn what this means because it is on our 2020 robot. And there are links in the description leading to the Talon SRX and Victor SPX firmware files. That firmware is the most updated version, and it's used to update motor controllers because motor controllers have new updates every single year or in between seasons, which we need to do in order to use the motor controller. And how you would update it is you would manually connect your computer to the robot, see if there was a motor controller here, click on it just anywhere in this line, firmware version. You would go to click this button. If you use the CTRE controller, there should be an organized area of this, or this would be in your downloads, but since I organize mine, I can just pull it from here. You just click the 2020 season, double click there, update device, or you can update all the Talon SRXs by just checking this box and then just clicking update device. This is also where you change the IDs of motor controllers. And that's it for the firmware. The other link is the CTRE Phoenix library, which one is an installer and one is a zip in case you don't have Windows or don't want to use the installer. If you use a zip file, the organizations on you, I will put a link in the description, I believe a tutorial or an instructions from WPILib on how to set that up correctly. But besides that, that's how you get the CTRE import for what I have here. So if you're trying to follow along, you won't have an error when you try to import this. That's it. Now, if you have any questions,
leave it down in the comment section.
I'm always open to them. And thank you for watching.